Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to day 2 of our conference on translation, interpretation, and artificial intelligence. We are delighted to see such strong participation and enthusiasm continuing from yesterday's sessions. The discussions so far have provided us with the rich insights into how AI is reshaping the fields of translation and interpreting, challenging traditional roles, introducing new tools, and prompting us to rethink our professional practices. Today, we'll build on that momentum with a fresh lineup of speakers who will delve deeper into key issues such as human-machine collaboration, ethical considerations, didactics, and the evolving skill sets required for the future. Let us begin this morning's session with our first presentation by Cintas Jorge, is that? Yeah, okay. Cintas Jorge Diaz, entitled Audiovisual Translation Meets AI New Frontiers, Challenges, and Opportunities. Please join me in welcoming him to the stage.
Salam alaikum. Good morning to everyone. And thank you for the introduction, and thank you very much as well to the organizers for having given me the opportunity to come back to Algiers and address you as an audience on a topic that is pretty relevant these days with artificial intelligence and the implications that that is going to have for us into the future. I wonder whether I can have my PowerPoint on the screen so that I can start moving ahead. Yep, and then, okay, so this is the topic of my presentation, and I'm going to be talking of what in the industry we'll call media localization, which is similar to audiovisual translation. Now, what do we mean by this field? Audiovisual communication, audiovisual translation is articulated around two main feelings or two main senses in human beings. We can hear and we can see. We can hear text that appears, we can hear text that is spoken, we can hear also sounds that are being made into a film. We then translate the speech, the dialogue, for people who don't understand the language, and we do it through subtitling, through dubbing, or through voiceover. But we also deal with the sound for people who cannot hear the information, and that's what we call subtitles for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. And I will be mentioning a little bit later on this. And we can also see information on the screen. We can see text on the screen, and that we will have to translate, whether we are doing dubbing, subtitling, or voiceover. And we will also see lots of information on the screen that we will give for granted. By now, you've seen me, you know more or less how old I may be, you know how I may dress, and so on. If you're blind, you won't be able to see any of that information. And that's what we produce for the blind people, which is called audio description. And it's another field that is done in our case. We've got these ideas here. We've got several ways of translating an audiovisual production that contains so much information. So we can do either subtitles or surtitles. We do in operas, for instance, or theaters, in live events. We can do also dubbing, interpreting. You see sometimes in news, documentaries, you might have an interpretation. Not very common in audiovisual translation, but it does happen. And then you also have dubbing. Dubbing we can do it in many ways. We can replace the soundtrack and then think of any Disney films into Arabic. You think that the people are speaking Arabic. They're not speaking Arabic in the original, but we just go into that game and believe that they are speaking our language, whether it is Spanish, French, Italian, or whatever. Sometimes you can hear the original background, and then the translation is overlapped. and then at the end you hear again the original background. You know that they're not speaking your language. You're not really being tricked on that one. And now what we're finding as well is lector dubbing. You don't hear the original very much, sometimes not at all, but you can tell that the lips and what you're hearing don't go together. Yeah, and it's a sort of minor dubbing, but it's an in-between. That is becoming very important, and that is what Netflix is, for instance, promoting in their platform. Those voiceovers are dubbing, lector, now they're all called dubbing. Traditionally, dubbing was only lip syncing, when you believed that it was. Now, when they talk in the industry AI and dubbing, they never referring to lip syncing. Very rarely. What they are referring to is those ones that you cannot hear the original. They're going to be documentaries and material like that. And it's very confusing because some people in the industry panic. Oh, it's going to be lip syncing that machine is going to be doing. No, it cannot. Fede showed yesterday a little clip that was 30 seconds that the machine could do, and even then it wasn't really good enough. It was lots of comments and lots of things going on. So we are far away from what it is, but terminologically it's a bit confusing because people will think, oh, dubbing is the one that they are being attacking there. And then we've got access services, which is in many countries by law. You might want to translate films into Arabic or not. But in many countries, by law, you have to produce subtitles for people who are deaf and audio description who are blind. And then that's making this area growing quite a lot. The important thing is here is that they're all multimodal. And then we're having here all the elements that artificial intelligence can play with. We've got images, we've got audio, we've got text, we've got all of them together at the same time. How can we resolve this? It's much more interesting if you think about it than, for instance, a written text, where there is no much more information. There may be some pictures now and again, but in here is, as they say in English, the flavor of the month. All these companies are playing to see what can we do with all these elements, how can we bring them together, and in the field of translation as well. Now, what is the technology available? We're not afraid in audiovisual translation of technology. We've been working, actually, we only exist because of technology. It was only the invention of cinema that made these translations compulsory. Yeah? And that is why we've always been working with technology. This is a very traditional, old way of doing it, but we've never been afraid of the technology coming our way. We can do many things in here. You've got programs that you can detect the sound. So the program is already thinking and is listening to the audio, and it gives me a sound wave. So if the sound wave is flat, it's dead. Nobody's talking. If it moves up and down, I know that they're talking, and I'm going to go there to do my translation. And maybe also to do the technical dimension. I can find the timings. I don't need to listen. I can see where it is, and I can choose my time. So it's going to help me speed up my work. And this is something that it has existed since the 70s, 80s. So it's nothing new or radical in here. The machine will also look at the images and tell us where there are shot changes. We don't like subtitles across a shot change, so the machine will do the scanning and tell you, be careful here, 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 that you don't want to have your translation going across. So it's very much involved there. With videos, we've been playing with videos for many years. You can play with videos these days. It's so easy. You can just video editing suites, and then you can change the images, you can alter them, put them in different orders and so on. Fine, we've been doing that for a long time. Even the sound, we've got sound technicians, and sometimes the Arabic translation is a bit too short, so we tell the technician, can you elongate a little bit? And then the technician will make it a little bit longer, and then it fits perfectly into the spot that it was in the original. So again, this is something that is in our field, and it's nothing new. We've also had machine translation in our field. To be honest, we started in audiovisual translation that way. Well before we were working with translation memories. So what you've got here, we've got YouTube since the early 2000s. They've been working with machine translation. You can see that still, if you go to YouTube, the translations that it generates is far from ideal. Might give you a gist, but you wouldn't like to watch a film with those subtitles because they're riddled with errors. They've been around since 2000. So it's been quite a while, and still the quality is not quite there. And then some projects that they've been doing in machine translation. Memory tools that have been in the industry for a very long time, particularly in scientific technical translation, they only made an appearance in audiovisual in the late 2010s. Okay, 2017, MemoQ, which is a memory tool, it remembers your translations and then tells you before you translate it this way, was designed for audiovisual material. And of course, the big competitors, SDL Trados, couldn't lag behind. So they did it straight away. A year later, they also had it. And now if you use Trados, or if you've got a license, it will have an API that allows you to work with subtitles. None of them is really ideal for subtitling. They tried, but I don't know many people that are using them for work because they're not designed with translation for audiovisual. They allow you to open the interface with a video. But that's far from ideal for a translator that is working in this field. That's not really what we need. Yeah? So we're still lagging behind in there. You've got several associations of translators, but they've been working in machine translation or tools for translators. And this idea, the linguist is not in the loop. The linguist is in the lead. Is leading the decisions. The machines don't think. So you have to lead, not being in the loop as sort of a passive integrator of that sort of communication. So we've been looking at lots of technology that we could use. Predictive language. If you're writing text and it's giving you ideas of what can continue, you might save some time there. Speech recognition, you can dictate your subtitles rather than have to be always typing. If you're typing for 8 hours, maybe your elbows are going to be painful, or your wrists and things. So we've been looking at other options that technology can be helpful and not necessarily translating automatically, that we know is still far from ideal in our field. And the fear these days is also not so much AI as a general concept, but generative AI. And this is one area that, for instance, audiovisual translators have got this little booklet, which is freely available on the internet, and they explain their positioning against or considering this type of technology there. So what is AI in audiovisual communication? Well, we've got all these layers, but we already have technology in there. How is this complementing what we've been doing for so many years in this field? Now, I, for one, don't know what AI means. And I've been asking people working in this, and we don't know. Is it machine translation? Is it memory tools? Is it speech recognition? Is it sound recognition? Is it image recognition? Because all those things we've had for many years. So what's the hub? What's the hype now with artificial intelligence? Well, fine, we've had it before. Is that what you mean? Or you mean something else? I've been looking at definitions. Wikipedia, IBM, they don't really tell me much of what artificial intelligence is meant to be. And then what you do get in there, this one here by Oxford Languages and Google, elaborates a bit further and tell you perception by how it's perceived or it's not perceived, but it's still very vague definitions because people don't quite know what we stand or what is it that is adding to our field in here. Where companies were asked a year ago in 2024, how do you use artificial intelligence? You've got there 60% were using it, some others were still not thinking. And if you go granularly into this, some companies said, we're using it for fear of missing out. We have to be perceived that we're doing artificial intelligence, otherwise people won't think that we're serious or that we are with the times. When you look, how are you using artificial intelligence? In my field, in audiovisual communication, they had subtitling programs. Well, subtitling programs were invented in the 70s. So that's fine. We've been using them since then. So what is new in there? And then perhaps a little bit new, it was synthetic voices. That was the only thing, and you can see that it's very little. It's 25% if you're far afield and you cannot see it. That was what they were doing a year ago. So it's still pretty much to be developed and to be done in this field. Now, artificial intelligence, if we accept some sort of common definition, it can be understood at 3 different levels. It's data exploration, is data analysis. And this is being done by many companies. If you go to Netflix and you watch something, then you're going to be told, well, maybe you might like this one because they know your viewing pattern and what you like and so on. So that's the data analysis that is being used a lot in many fields, not just in translation. Process automation. We use artificial intelligence to help us with the process, not with the output, but doing things along the way. And then you've got content creation, generative AI. I'm going to create something from scratch with the help of the technology. I'm going to be paying attention to process automation, which I think is clear, is key for us, and this is the area that in audiovisual translation is very important, and is helping us rather than detracting from us. We went to the cloud. These days, you don't work on a computer with your programs installed in your computer. You go to the cloud for many reasons. Particularly, if you're looking at the technology, it will be all somewhere else. It's not on your computer. If you're working with the latest film with Tom Cruise, you don't want to make it to be pirated or for people to find out earlier than when it's been cloud. I won't send you anything. I will only give you a code. You have to go into that system, and if something happens to that film, I know it's been you because I didn't give the access to anyone else. Yeah? So there's one way for security and so on, and this one, working in the cloud, you can work from any computer, from any country, from any place. You don't need to have your computer. Anytime that you got your key, your password and your credentials, you go in and work. That's simple. But also, the environment allows you to implement technology in a way that you couldn't in your computer. Yeah, and this is something that is really making a big impact. Most companies these days will only work in the cloud. Yeah, that is a big change for us. And then you can do absolutely everything in the cloud. I can test you if you want to do an exam to work in my company. I can do it in the cloud. I can do all the invoicing, all the translations. What is more, and it's a little bit like Big Brother, I can just walk inside. You might walk, enter the system, and start working. As the project manager, I can walk inside as well and see what you're doing. And I can see what time you started working, how many subtitles you've done, what your translation looks like, and so on. So I've got greater control as well to follow up your translation. And I know that some subtitles are going to be problematic because they're using swear words, because they're using sensitive language. So I can see how you're translating and tell you, please revisit that translation. That's going to be a problem, or that's going to be challenging well before you completed your whole project. So this is something that is helping us quite a lot in there. We've got the cloud. If you watch TED, these videos on internet with education, that's the cloud. And TED has been living out of volunteers that they just go in there and do the translation. It's not professional. Companies couldn't work that way. Companies developed their own platforms for subtitling. This was well before the pandemic. We were moving in that direction while ago. Yeah, in 2007, people were already working in here. But when the pandemic came, it was clear that we couldn't go to the studio to record for dubbing. And they just look around, what can we do? What do they do in subtitling? Oh, they do it online, but then we can do it online as well in dubbing maybe. And that's when companies started doing all this dubbing remotely. So you don't need to go to certain places. Again, most of it is not really with translation in mind, it's for the workflows. The voice talents don't need to come. They can do it from home. And then I'm going to be saving time, money, and so on. Translators, we were always left behind. There was like a sort of afterthought, which is sad, but it's been that way. This is what it looks like. You walk into one of these platforms, and you can do anything you want to do. You can do subtitles from scratch. They've given you the video, and you're going to do absolutely everything. Or they've given you the subtitles in English, and you have to replace the English for Arabic, and that is what is called Translate Pro. So you're working with a template. If you know what you're doing, and you've done it for many years, you can also do the review, and then you can check somebody's work, and then you can give them feedback on the solutions and anything. You can also do access services. You might be doing audio description for the blind. If you check Disney, most Disney's films will have audio description for the children. Yeah, the children that are blind. So if you want to learn how it's done, it's growing quite a lot in many industries. Netflix is promising that they want to be fully inclusive, and they want to embrace all viewers and all users of their platforms. So this is expected to grow a bit further. Then you can also do transcription. We saw yesterday a speech recognition, and they will listen to the original and give you what they are talking about. For a film, might not be essential. For a documentary or a live interview, they haven't got a script, they were just talking like that, so that might help you a little bit. It's going to be wrong, certain, but at least you've got something where to start and then how to improve what they're saying and save money and time in doing that. And then you can also merge your subtitles with your videos all in the platform. So actually you can do absolutely everything without having to dirty your computer because you're working in the cloud. That's what it looks like. So you've got your video. On the right-hand side, you've got the text what you're going to be writing. And then at the bottom, all those lines there is the sound recognition and all the information, the technical dimension. And if you're working from English, then you will have already the English given to you. You cannot change it. It's there for your reference. And then on the far right, that's what you will be doing your Arabic in there. Yeah, and that is quicker because you don't have to worry about the technical dimension. Now, what is important, and I'm sorry you cannot see it in here very well, particularly from the back, is the automation of the systems. If you work as a project manager, which is a very reasonable job in the industry, and they will be looking for people like you with knowledge of languages, with knowledge of audiovisual communication and so on, what you can do is you can set up your project from the very beginning in a way that is all automated. So you're gonna say, I need this film in 35 languages. I'm gonna be using speech recognition in the 37 languages that is gonna be revised by this person, translated into Arabic by this person, then it's going to be cure review by this person, it will go back to the translator, and blah, blah. I can set it in this way, and as soon as the first one goes, the system will recognize all the activities, and you don't need to send any emails to anyone. The system will say, the transcription is finished to the person that you allocated to check the transcription. When that person closes and says, completed, the system recognizes, will trigger an email to the translator. Please start translating. When the translator has finished, triggers the email to the other person. So as a project manager, you can have many projects at the same time, and they're automated from the very beginning. There might be hiccups, you might interfere, but everything is much more smooth. Yeah, it's more seamless. And this is what industries are implementing. Here, more than artificial intelligence, which is a term that I struggle to use and understand, automation is what is helping. Yeah, and this is things that are not very creative. I need to do these things. It's just automated. It's just always the same. It's always the same. I have to send an email, listen, go and translate. Well, if the system does that, I can spend the time doing something else a bit more entertaining, maybe even having a tea and having a break in here rather than having to do that. That's what I think the technology is amazing, and it really is helpful in our field. Now, in artificial intelligence, we've got several things here. Automated text translation, but this has been around for many, many years. We've got as well image and sound recognition, I show you, and we've had it as well for many years. And then automated speech recognition, which again, it listens and then transcribes, which has been around for many years. And then synthetic voices, which is again very general, that we can use in all our fields. Now, when we discuss this in audiovisual translation, we look usually at three ways of doing things, which is, the first one here is a speech to text. How do I deal with that? How can I deal with this? And a speech to text, what I can do is, for instance, re-speaking, or what we call live subtitling. If we were now in Zoom, for instance, you could activate subtitles. And what it's doing is, when I'm talking, automatically you get the subtitles underneath. Live events, when there is a mix of audiences, you might also get live subtitles there and then. And they're automatically there as listening and transcribing. And then we can do it intralingually, English into English, but you can activate the subtitles in Spanish. You will get probably sometimes garbage, but that is something that it can be done, and it's in there. What I can do as well, if I've got the transcription, I can then do the spotting. I can align the original with the sound with the written text. Yeah, so that's something that I could do in there, which is the automated spot in there. I can also do the reverse. Text, I've got written text to speech. It's been around for a while. For instance, blind people, if you send them a message, they will reply to you because they've got a speech text recognition, and then it speaks out for them. Yeah, but we are doing that. If you add a written text and then you add synthetic voices, you could do audio description, for instance, for blind people, or revoicing. Yeah, so automatically recognizes when the time is, and then in the silence will read your text. And as a user, you can use a synthetic voice that is male, female, whatever, and then it will read it in those silences. So as a blind people, you've got now more access to audiovisual material that usually was beyond your reach. And then what we've got as well, which is one of the ultimate barriers or frontiers, is speech to speech. How can I go from something that is spoken to something that is also spoken in here? And then we've got, for instance, I can modify voices. If you were aware of the latest Oscars, one of the big films was The Brutalist. And then in The Brutalist, what they did, they modified the voices of the main characters so that they could speak Hungarian. They couldn't speak Hungarian, but they made them sound Hungarian as if they were refugees in the USA, and the Hungarian, they were struggling with Hungarian. It was a big thing because that was not their acting. They weren't acting, they weren't good as phonetics, and they used artificial intelligence to modify and pretend that they were refugees, couldn't speak English well, they were speaking with a Hungarian accent. So up to you, is that really true acting, or is not really, shouldn't have won any prize, or how do you see that? But that is one of the ethical dimensions in here. What I can do as well is clone voices. I can use my voice in Spanish, and then I can clone it and use the same timbre, the same intonation in French, in German, in Finnish, Hungarian, whatever. I'm not sure people would love to listen to me in all those languages with my intonation and so on, but that's something that technology allows us to do. I can do machine dubbing, and I will talk a little bit more about that because that is being done. And remember, machine dubbing is not lip syncing. When they talk about that, is adding audio to a video that it was there. We're not going to take care of any lip syncing or anything like that. And then what you can do, Baidu, which is the Google in China, for a while they've been experimenting with interpreting. So you get your headphones, I will be speaking in English, and then you will get your translation in Arabic. This has been really not working, but they've been trying a bit more how that can be improved in there. The one that nobody has been really discussing very much is from pictures to text. I can give the machine a picture and then say, okay, what is going on in this picture? If I am blind, that would be ideal. I know what is going on in there. But if we do a picture, imagine a film, 90 minutes, a TV series, 1 hour, how can we rationalize that to make sense and make it meaningful in our field? And still, we're struggling with that for audio description, which is the field in there, and then with synthetic voices. If I've got already the text written by the machine, then I can get a voice that will read it for blind people. Now, we need to be very, very aware of a crucial distinction in audiovisual communication. Is entertainment, films, TV series, and the likes, and then user-generated media. The TikToks of this world, the Facebooks, and all that. That's where people are working a lot, not so much in entertainment. Yeah? Although we see some inroads in there, but not so much. The industry is very healthy. This is the projection in audiovisual into the future. Netflix last year came out with their money, and most of their money is in there. You can see that it's really low, and this is outside of the USA, outside of the North America. So that means that there is a lot of scope for growth. And the only scope for growth is languages. They need to translate more into more languages because those are countries that don't speak English, most of them. And this is, we produce lots of material, lots of films in here. So you've got there more than 15,000 films every year and 250,000 TV series commercially. Yeah, so there is a lot to be produced in here. What is also important is how people consume audiovisual material. We complain, teachers, another generation, you don't read the students, you don't go for books, everybody's always on the screens watching things. is to some extent quite true. This is YouTube, and it tells us that every day people watch 1 billion hours on their platform, only on YouTube. And every minute of our lives, 500 hours of audiovisual productions are uploaded to YouTube. We're not talking about Facebook, Vimeo, or any other platforms. So there's a lot of material that isn't there. Even if we were all translators of audiovisual productions, we couldn't cope. 500 hours in 1 minute? Who is going to be doing all that translation? So you can see why, if you make it relative, some companies say, maybe if we do machine, or maybe if we use technology, could we do some of these things in here? Fede, Professor Chaume was talking about YouTubers, and you've got there, Mr. Bean is the top one. It's even more than that. He's got as many subscribers as Netflix. 300 million people follow him. And he's always been doing it in English, no other languages. You've got many more. Is there a market, perhaps, that we could do if he's translated into Arabic? Are you going to be more going for him? And then when you click, you're going to be generating more money for Mr. Bean and maybe for the translator as well, helping him to be in Arabic? That's a proposition that we never thought. Now, if you follow a little bit the industry, Netflix has already paid a few YouTubers to have programs in Netflix and bloggers. So this is a revolution in the making. We don't know. It's all very in the air. Netflix is also bringing in video games to the portfolio of offers that we've never had. Is that going to be another revolution as well, that we're going to be video gaming in a different way? Mr. Beast was one of the first ones chosen by YouTube, clearly because of his approach there, to do translation into other languages, with the human in the lead. Yeah, it was a translation that it was with humans translating, and then you've got there, if you go to the YouTube platform, you've got there at the bottom the sign, you choose audios, and then you can choose many languages that have been done in there. But the human was in there. They went as well for machine translation, dubbing, with no humans in the loop. Yeah, it was just automated. There is a very interesting article by a colleague of mine, and she takes a look at this one, Amoeba Sisters, which is sciences, documentaries for children, and so on, explaining sciences, and then they did it into Spanish, yeah, automatically. Possibly it would have never been translated because there is not really much money there. It's just somebody doing this type of videos. But the translation is really poor. It confuses cell as the human cells with a cell in a prison. Really silly things that it does. But there was nothing before, and this was one way of doing it. But now YouTube have taken the bold approach that now if you own a YouTube channel, then they're going to do the translation automatically for dubbing or revoicing in there. And then they tell you there, when you upload a new video, we will automatically do the dubbing. But then they give you a disclaimer. The disclaimer is very long, but I'll read the most important thing in here. You know, they might contain errors because of accents, mispronunciations, dialects, background noise in the original, proper nouns, idioms, jargon. Well, you're telling me that there's going to be errors? Yes or yes. Because if all those things affect the translation, it's going to be crazy. Yeah? And then they tell you, well, you know, also the matching the voices might not be right. It might be out of time. I get more problems with here. And then they do it automatically, and then they tell you, you should find someone that will make a revision. Now, that is, to me, is ethically wrong. You know, you don't deal with my material in a way that you want, and then you're asking, putting the onus on me because the translations look ludicrous and stupid. But also, if I'm interviewing anyone, are you going to be translating? Are those people look stupid when they're talking in other languages because the translation is meaningless? And this is all instigated by a big player in the industry with very little control. That's when artificial intelligence technology becomes challenging and becomes something that we need to really fight against in there. Now, what are the challenges and the opportunities into the future? If you're looking for jobs, the jobs in my industry continue to be there. You continue to find adverts for people who want to do the translation, project managers who want to do subtitling, who want to do dubbing. They're not disappearing. If anything, there are quite a few that are coming up because Netflix is expanding in other languages, many more platforms are coming, and so on. So those are going to be there at least for a while, but we have new ones. We've been talking about post editors, prompt experts that they know how to work with the technology. You've got templators, for instance, which will be doing the transcriptions of the material so that it can be used as the basis. Imagine you've got an interesting film in Arabic that I need to translate into 50 languages. I don't really have many translators in Korea that could do Arabic into Korean. What I'm going to need you to do is, can you translate this Arabic film into English? And then from English, I'm going to go into all these other languages. And I'm going to be asking you, something that I've never done myself, I'm going to be asking you to work into your foreign language. Traditionally, in translation, we always force the students or candidates to go into their mother tongue. But now we're finding the reverse, that you are translated into English to facilitate the translation into other languages, because some languages are not widely spoken around the world. And anything that we do these days, it goes around the world automatically in all these platforms. So that's something that we're seeing there in changing. Now, some of my colleagues didn't want to look into the future. It was a bit challenging. I think we've got here to wrap up. The volumes of audiovisual communication are growing, and we know the projections are that it's going to be a very healthy one. And we need to find ways of dealing with all this, and we're going to find more and more granularization. Before, they would say, do you know of anyone who can do subtitles? And then that's fine. Now they ask me sometimes, do you know of someone who can do subtitles and sports? Or somebody who can do subtitles and knows about cuisine, because it's going to be a special thematic TV series, which is only going to be cookery, yeah? Or medicine. Yeah? And then, the same as we do in the rest of translation, we've got segments, we've got specializations. We never had it, and we still don't do it. We teach subtitling, but we don't teach medical subtitling, scientific subtitling. We do it very generally, and the industry is moving away from that, trying to find better experts in here. AI is not it's not new for us. It's been around for many years. The way they're telling me AI is, and we're finding now is easier to integrate with certain things. The uptake in here, in media entertainment, the high level is not there at all. Nobody is doing anything with artificial intelligence when it comes to high-level productions, films, and so on. You might find some experimentation, but when they go in there, they wouldn't be doing it automatically. And then you will have, if they do things with post-editing, then you've got here as well, is going to be automated. It's automating certain tasks, but it's not getting rid of the jobs. We're not relinquishing subtitlers. What we've got is that the role is being automated in certain ways, but it's still in there. And then, of course, the ethical dimensions. We don't know how viewers read the information, receive the information. There is virtually no reception studies. It was yesterday Professor Song from the USA saying that we must debunk the myths. They tell you that it's nearly like as good as human, but is it really? Have we tried with human beings, with human users, with people that are watching these productions? What is the response? What is the reaction? And I think with that one will be my last one, Saha, and I hope you liked it. Thank you. Shukran.
Thank you.
Want me to stay or?
It's okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Jorge Diaz, for that insightful and forward-looking presentation. You brought much-needed clarity to how audiovisual translation is being reshaped by AI, not only in terms of speed and accessibility, but also in how it challenges traditional notions of creativity, nuance, and cultural mediation. Your exploration also of both the opportunities, challenges, and ethical dilemmas facing audiovisual translation professionals was particularly thought-provoking. Thank you once again for your compelling contribution. Okay, we now move to our next speaker, Saina Francesco. Am I pronouncing it the right way? Okay, yeah, okay. So, entitled Language in Computer Science as Information Technologies.
Well, first of all, I would like to start by spending a couple of words to thank the organizing committee and especially Adila and Ilham for setting up this conference and for their continued and relentless support in the organization. I don't know if we have interpreting students working today as well. Okay, they're not, but I want to thank them for their work, for what they did yesterday in interpreting a very long conference day. And also, yesterday I didn't have, when I received your acknowledgement on this stage, I was so surprised that I didn't have a chance to say that this is my first time visiting Algeria, and I'm so grateful for the invitation and for the warm welcome. So I will now move to my presentation, and in my presentation I will outline the intersection of language studies and computer science. And I will, as a young researcher in the early stages of my career, I will especially try to address students and researchers, young researchers, and on how I will try to share with them how these two disciplines who have not been interacting with each other from a research perspective that much so far can actually enrich each other and bring mutual benefits, because as we saw in the many presentations over the last 2 days, there are many applications and interactions in professional practice, but I think we should also foster this kind of collaboration in research and in methodologies as well. And I will bring a couple of final examples of my own research on how I've tried to bring computer science techniques into translation and interpreting studies. So I will start with a general overview on how language and technology have been historically interacting with each other. And I would like to start with an anecdote, which came to my mind as I heard also as I talked to some of your professors over the last couple of days, and we also heard some presentations yesterday on how AI is reshaping the way we teach, the way we assess students. And I remember when I was a student myself in the early 2000s, there was a common concern among professors about Wikipedia, which was the latest addition, the latest platform back then. It was the first online encyclopedia, and you could find a lot of information on there, and professors were scared that we were just going to copy a Wikipedia page and use it for our own assignments. And I see the same kind of fear and concern today around ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. Many teachers and educators are worried that students are going to use these tools to cheat in their assignments. However, this kind of digital technology over the years, so as I said, since Wikipedia and even before that, has always changed the way we interact with knowledge, with information. This is why the word information is in my title, information technology. And it has changed the way we manage and process information and knowledge as humans. Actually, two psychologists in 1998, Clark and Chalmers, started proposing a theory, which is the theory of the extended mind and distributed cognition, because they started observing that with the emergence of digital tools, we are gradually delegating and outsourcing some shares of our cognitive load to these external devices. And this, of course, raised some concerns of our cognitive ability, which is even greater today. We heard it yesterday. But I just wanted to read some words from a text, an excerpt from a text that deals precisely with this concern. And it says that this resource is causing an externalization of memory and a dehumanization, a gradual loss of memory usage by humans, the presumption of knowledge, an apparent omniscience but no actual knowledge, a weakening of the mind, and with the ultimate removal of the fatigue of remembering and recalling information. So it looks like this text applies to ChatGPT because it seems to go all of this. It's a weakening of the mind, the removal of the fatigue of recalling information. However, this text goes back to Plato. And in one of his work, the Phaedrus, in the Myth of Thought especially, he was reporting these words when talking about the passage that we had from orality to writing. So some of these concerns go back thousands and thousands of years, and every time a new technology of the word has been impacting us as humankind, we have had to face with these concerns, with how we deal with knowledge, with information, and how we use language. Because of course, the way we used language when there was only orality was very different than the way we started using and structuring language when writing was introduced. The same happened again with the introduction of the printing press, and it's happening now again with the digitization of the word. So this is also a way to kind of relieve ourselves from these fears and concerns, because humankind and humans have always found ways to go through these revolutions, and I think they have ultimately benefited us as humanity, even though our cognitive structures have changed. So this is just a timeline to explain what I said, that when we moved from orality to various kind of writing technologies. Now I will specifically move to the relationship between language and technology, because actually over time, linguistic studies, language studies, I have a background in linguistics myself, and over recent years we have started to regard language, to consider language as a technology itself. If we define technology as any means, any tool that we have developed as humans to accomplish a task, or at least facilitate our job in accomplishing a task. So in this way, language can actually be regarded as a technology that humankind has developed in order to do something, to achieve a goal. And this goal is primarily transferring and sharing and conveying information to other members of our species. So the primary goal of language as a technology was to find a way, to find a tool that we could use to share information with other members of our species. And in this way, computer science was developed as another kind of technology with a similar goal, with the same goal actually, that of finding a way to effectively processing, organizing, and sharing information. Has information in it. So in this way, from this perspective, language and computer and information and computer science, share the common goal of being technologies that humans have developed to optimize the way we organize and share information with our fellow humans. However, we also know that language has another purpose in addition to this of sharing information. But before moving into that, I just wanted to mention a few references in the early phases of this research, which may be useful for young researchers to really understand where the foundations of this intersection of language and computer science are. Now here you can find a book which is about the relationship, and which is the book which actually was one of the first that started teaching us to consider language as a technology, and it is a book by Walter Ong, which was a Jesuit priest in the United States, and he precisely analyzed what I was saying about the the transformation that we had when moving from orality to writing and literacy, but the same teachings apply today for the transformation that we are experiencing today. Then we had two other very important figures in our history. The first one was another Jesuit priest. I don't know why Jesuit priests have such an interest in these topics, but he was an Italian one. It was Father Roberto Busa. That is why I'm mentioning him. And he was actually the first one. He's considered the father of computational linguistics because he was the first one who understood that computational methods, calculation and mathematics, could be used to conduct some kind of linguistic research. Of course, Professor Mitkov, who is a renowned expert in this field, yesterday told us that language is not mathematics, but still a large component of language can be analyzed through computational methods. This can help us a lot, not to understand language in full, but at least to scrutinize some linguistic phenomena. And he was precisely the first one. Of course, in his case, Father Roberto Busa applied that to religious text, and his Index Thomisticus, his most famous work, and it is still studied today. And the other figure is Zelig Harris, which is the father of the so-called distributional semantics. Another kind, he was both a linguist and a mathematician, and he also strongly contributed to the implementation of computational methods to analyze language. Then, as I said, language also has another component beyond information sharing and information transfer, which is the social and relational dimension to it. We do not only use language as humans to convey information, but we also use language to create relationships, to create social bonds within communities. So it has this social and relational dimension to it as well. And this is something which, this is exactly the portion which cannot be computed, because there is no way of computing emotions, relations, and bonds, and this, all these aspects. And this is precisely another step that this kind of discipline has witnessed, with an important book published by Oxford, by Daniel Dorr, which precisely regards language. It is called the instruction of imagination, and it considers language as a social communication tool. So a new dimension is added to this use of language, not only transferring and sharing information, which is useful but not enough. It is not the only purpose we use language for, but also to create these social and communicative bonds with other people. And I think we should keep in mind, I wanted to start with this overview to kind of give you my perspective on the two components, the two aspects that we should consider when addressing the role of AI and computer science in language. Language has these two major components: the informative one, which can somehow be effectively addressed with computer science, with AI, because it deals with the same purpose, that is organizing and processing information, and this other component which is exclusively human, because connection relationships can only happen between humans. So this also gives us an idea of where the two components and the two perspectives fit. Now I will move to some of this of the work that I've done, and we'll just share some reflections throughout to show you how precisely in my own research I've tried to combine these two components, which I think can be mutually beneficial for both disciplines. Of course, for language studies, because in linguistics, we've been, you know, that linguistics has been dominated for decades by the perspectives from Chomsky, Noam Chomsky, who was actually a student from Zelig Harris, one of the people that I mentioned before, but his approach was completely different because Chomsky thought that language was he had an innatist perspective. He thought that language was a cognitive function that humans have in their own brain, in the way we are created, the way we are. Whereas his mentor, Zelig Harris, conceived language as a technology. And maybe the truth lies in between the two perspectives, but still, as I said, language models in computational linguistics, in language studies, there have been attempts to create language models starting from Chomsky from decades, and they actually didn't work with rules for decades, because as Professor Mitkov said, language is too ambiguous, too irregular to only be explained and represented through rules. Then deep learning came in, as Professor Mitkov said, and deep learning is basically a large scale of application of distributional semantics. And we started having language models that, even if they have many mechanisms which cannot be explained, which are not transparent, the so-called black blocks, have many aspects that we still cannot fully understand, and they are largely based on statistics, but we still that they are somehow working better than the models that we've been creating for decades. So this tells us, and this was the point I was trying to make before, that a major share of our use of language must rely on these mechanisms. I mean, there must be a large component on the way we use and understand language that has to be based on these kind of probabilistic and statistical components, because if we only rely on statistics with large language models, they are not fully able to grasp language in its entirety, but they still work. And I think that the kind of missing component behind what can be solved through statistics and what's the actual real use of language is the space that we, as experts, can live in today. And this is what I'm trying to do with my own research. So the first one, I will present two examples of research, one in translation and one in interpreting, where I've tried to apply this kind of computer science techniques. The first one is a study that I did with the Sapienza Natural Language Processing Group. Is a project that we started in 2022, and back in that year we were lucky and enough to win the Best Paper award at the Association for Computational Linguistics conference, and we investigated precisely what also Professor Mitkov was saying yesterday, the issue of semantic ambiguity. There's a specific field which is called word sense disambiguation, because we know that machine struggles with polysemous words, words which have multiple meanings depending on context. This is precisely what humans use a lot. I mean, this kind of ambiguity, it's based on what in linguistics is known as Zipf's law. So this helps us as humans to kind of optimize, because we can use the same word to express multiple concepts. So we are efficient as humans, as communicators, precisely because we have this polysemy to our words. But that is precisely the space where machines struggle. So we analyzed this across various languages, across several languages, and the work is still ongoing, and we are expanding our language coverage also to cover minority language. But the issue is still there, even in high resource languages. So we found out that even the most advanced models, neural machine translation models, and large language models, they claim they are able to grasp the semantic of words, but actually they cannot, even with basic examples. So this is an example, and it is, I was surprised yesterday when I saw Professor Mitkov's example, because it was pretty similar to mine, where we have a very simple sentence in English. I stood by the bank looking at the ships. And of course, we as humans, we can immediately understand that the word bank here, because of ships, because of the context, refers to the river bank. Of course, we have no problem in identifying that. Even if there is no much context, I mean, it's a simple sentence. We do not have the rest of the text, but we do not need that in order to understand what the meaning is. And machine translation engines, even the best performing one, even large language models, cannot understand the meaning of the word in this. I mean, if you go and look for this specific example, they may have fixed it, because as I said, we won a prize, so they probably went in there and changed that manually. But still, the underlying mechanism is that they are not able to grasp what the specific meaning of polysemous words is in a given context. So in this case, even if you don't read Italian, there's the image, and you can understand that the word bank was translated into Italian with the equivalent for the financial institution. And of course, this also shows us that artificial intelligence is not intelligent. I mean, because this is something that even a kid would understand. So I think this also helps us understand that we should not kind of create this kind of fight one against the other, because we are playing on two completely different levels. But still, we used computational methods. We used, of course, we identified the meaning of words. I do not want into much detail, but we identified words with sense embeddings. So basically, we gave a vector to each meaning of a word, and we saw, and theoretically, the same concept should be associated with the same vector across languages for the same meaning, but this doesn't happen, and this is why the machine translation or large language models produce this kind of mistakes. And of course, the title of this paper is Disambiguation Biases in Machine Translation. So we talked a lot about various kinds of biases, gender bias, cultural bias, but semantic bias, I think it's the, maybe it's not so popular as gender bias or other kind of biases, but I think it's the most important one, because if machines cannot understand the meaning, I mean, all the other biases are a consequence of this. They do, I mean, the bias that they cannot understand if it's a male or a female, it's because they do not understand the meaning of what's been said. So this is underlying bias that explains them all. Another application that I would like to mention in this case is for interpreting studies. We've heard some presentations yesterday about technology helping interpreters either before their job, so for preparing glossaries, for studying a topic, for gathering terminology, or during the actual assignment with real-time captions, with automatic transcription, with figure extraction, and so on. However, there is currently no tool that helps interpreter after their job is done. And I think that that is an equally important phase. If we want to improve as interpreters, we need to review our performance. We need to, so that we can learn from our mistakes. We can see what went well, what didn't, and definitely maybe take note of some terminology that we didn't catch during the assignment. This can also be helpful. This kind of application could be helpful, for instance, for interpreting trainers to help them assess students as a support, as I will explain in a minute, not as a replacement. So I developed this assessment framework. I'm working on this assessment framework where you can, this is just the input interface of the prototype, where you can basically, even if you can't read it well, you can basically just upload or stream the source speech and the interpreted rendition. And the system will basically perform various tasks. First, it will transcribe the source speech through automatic speech recognition. Then it will generate embeddings for the source and target speech. So it will create precisely what I was saying, this let's say, representations of meaning, even if not accurate. And this is, of course, the limitation, and this is why it is a support and not a replacement for human assessment. And it will then use a computational method, which is semantic similarity, which I'm not explaining now. But basically, it will calculate the similarity of source sentences and target sentences. Of course, it will be an approximation, but still, even if it doesn't get it 100% correct, it still can be a help for interpreters to see what are, I mean, it will certainly detect patent mistakes. So it can still be a help, for instance, for students self-assessing themselves, to have another tool if they do not have a peer, fellow student who can help them with feedback, can still be a tool to kind of understand where the major discrepancies with the source speech were, and then go and manually review the performance in those parts of the speech, of the rendition. So this is just another example of how we can use computational methods and mathematical methods like semantic similarity in interpreting studies. As I said, this is not a silver bullet. It will not resolve translation or interpreting studies, but still I think from a research perspective, from a scholarly perspective, I think that this can enrich the disciplines, because we know that translation and interpreting studies are young disciplines compared to other disciplines who've been around for decades or even centuries. And I think that we can truly benefit from these advances in other disciplines to advance our analysis and evaluation methods in our own disciplines. And of course, this will then turn into better practice, because, I mean, I'm a believer that high quality practice can only derive from informed empirical research. And still this will cover that part of language, of the language purpose that I said before, which is transferring and conveying information. And we shouldn't be cheated by the fact that technological advancement is so fast and so efficient, because it can give the idea that it can solve most of our problems and facilitate most of the criticalities, but we should always remind ourselves that language has this other component, which is the human connection, which is the relationship, and that is something that only humans can do. I mean, only humans can truly understand other humans, all the nuances. So these can absolutely be useful tools, and I truly believe they are, because I focus my research around that, so otherwise I wouldn't do so. But we should never forget that translation and interpreting are basically the narration of someone else's story, and in order to tell that story, we need to be humble, we need to put ourselves in the position of listening first, understanding, and then finding the best ways to convey that message to the appropriate audience. And that is something that we can only do because that belongs to the other component of language, which is this social communication and relational component. So I thank you so much for your attention, Saha. And if you have any questions or curiosities, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saina Francesco, for that presentation. I would say that fascinating and well-structured presentation. Indeed, it's clear that your work contributes meaningfully to ongoing conversations about the role of human language in shaping intelligence systems. Thank you again for sharing your expertise with us. So, as we come to the final presentation of our session, our morning session today, the first session, we're closing on a truly rich and intellectually ambitious note. Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce Izri Fadma, right? Okay, who will be presenting on the topic, Will Neural Machine Translation Debunk the Derridian Impossible? The Case of Medieval Arabic Texts. Okay, welcome here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I couldn't connect to my cloud to find my presentation, so I had to make up one very quickly, very fast. So it's very basic, but don't worry, I know what I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to be hallucinating, I promise, or I will try not to. Anyhow, so I'm really glad that my colleagues have already laid the ground for the fact that machines are not going to replace us. This is really reassuring. Thank you, Francesco. We're going to be around and we're going to be translating and interpreting. I'm going to talk about Derrida's Impossible. I thought that it's just right to, if we're going to have an international, thank you so much. If we're going to have to talk about translation in Algiers, we have to talk about Derrida. This is his hometown. And he's the one who made the boldest and not weirdest, but really very courageous statement about translation, that translation is not possible, but it is necessary, and it needs to go on. So what did he mean by impossible? We will find out. We have many definitions of translation, and to this day, in translation studies, a lot of people have different, of course, views of translation. So what I'm going to try to do is give an overview about the problem of the definition problem, and then talk a little bit about the knowledge transfer, translation as knowledge transfer, and then all the turns that we've had in the last, since the late 60s, beginning of the 70s, and then I will talk also about the Derridian Impossible and how really, for me, it captures what translation really is, because, and that falls right into what Francesco just said, that there is another component to language. That's the human aspect of it. And then we'll go into neural machine translation and how when we try to translate medieval Arabic texts, you know that the Arabic production of knowledge was at its best, unfortunately, in the medieval era. Maybe, hopefully, this will help us revive a little bit of our tradition in the Arabic language. And maybe we will not have a golden age, but we will try at least to get a silver age. Inshallah, yes. It's better than nothing, right? So I will start by the problem of definition and the transfer of knowledge. So the transfer of knowledge, this idea of transfer, of course, started in the 20th century, or maybe with the Germans in the 19th century, but it took off in the 20th century, that translation is a transfer from one language to another. Transfer of meaning, transfer of thought, transfer of knowledge. The problem with that definition is that knowledge, according to, I'll go to Aristotle, not as far as Plato, but I think it's good enough. Knowledge is not transferable. Knowledge is something that you create. You have to create it from your tradition, your context, your environment. Yes, you can borrow from other traditions that came before. You will learn from those traditions, but if you are only borrowing and practicing, you are not doing anything. You don't have knowledge. You are only using what somebody else has given you. And in the biggest, and as Scott Montgomery puts it, the greatest translation movement in the history of humanity, the one of Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, they didn't just take the Hellenic tradition and applied it to the Abbasid dynasty or the Arab Islamic civilization. They transformed the Hellenic tradition. And they did that through translation, because they didn't see translation as transfer. They saw translation as a means of, Apaya, I think, calls it cross-contamination. We can say cross-pollination. We can call it transformation. Actually, in Greek, it's metaphrasis, right? So, from metaphrasis, it always makes me think metamorphosis. You take something and you transform it. You add to it. You benefit from it. And you create what's yours. That's how I understand translation. And I think that's how Derrida understood it as well. Because for Derrida, translation is that creative force at the encounter of two languages, two cultures, two traditions, where, as you said, the black blocks, the gaps, that's where translation happens. If you don't have that gap, if you are not at that border where communication stops and the translator stumbles, then you don't have translation. This is the definition I would give to translation. In translation studies, however, as you all know, from Jacobson, yes, from Jacobson, it has always been taken as transfer. So we had the linguistic turn where we said, okay, it's the finding, translation is the finding of equivalencies, right? Linguistic equivalencies. You take what this means in this context, and then we'll find something equivalent in that context. Again, we're transferring. Every time I hear transfer, I went to a Jesuit school too. I went to Georgetown, so every time I hear transfer, I think relics. You know, taking the relics of a saint from one place to another, to a crypt. And that doesn't apply to me. I don't want to be a relic, and I don't want to be transporting relics. And I don't work in transportation. I'm a translator. I want to take something and run with it. I want to take something, learn from it, add something to it, and then adapt it to my tradition, to my belief system, to my culture, and then I'll see, even if I don't create anything with it, the students will, the future will, right? Somebody will find it and do something fantastic, hopefully, with it, right? And then we have the adaptation of meaning with semiotics, and that came very close, really, because we're talking about the borders of languages, the borders of cultures and civilizations. With semiotics, I have nothing against Paul Ricoeur, but I think that he was a little bit stuck in his own tradition, and he couldn't come out of it. So he was talking about hospitality and one language just offering hospitality to another, and maybe adopting one culture. We're not talking about adoption here. We're talking about mixing two human traditions, mixing basically two humans to give another one. It's like having a marriage, or, you know, how do I put it nicely? You are all over 18, right? So maybe I should say it. Okay, so you have two people mating and then making a baby. That's what it is, really. It's okay, right? Yeah, okay. Yeah, and then we, at the late 80s, with Basnet and Lefebvre, we had cultural translation as cultural contact, and that's still being used a lot today, especially in professional translation, you know, in the practice, not in translation studies, but in the practice, we're still talking a lot about, oh, this contact. I translate because I love other people, and I love to discover the world, and I want to have this cultural communication. It's great. It is fantastic, absolutely. It's great to have that kind of kumbaya, peaceful world kind of, you know, view that will make you feel that you are getting closer to people as a human being, and you are discovering other cultures. It is fantastic. But we all know that translation is not just to put people face to face and talking to each other. Translation is a civilizational revolution. And for revolutions to happen, they have to be painful. You have to take something from the original, and then you have to take something from the target, you mix them together, you have your chemical reaction, your explosion, and something new is born. Just like we said about humans. You have a man and a woman, and then a baby is born. And that's always, I hear, very painful. That's what they say. I haven't experienced it yet. Well, it's a little too late for me to experience it. But that's what it is, right? It's a revolutionary act. It's something that changes the human being. So, and then we, after the contact and the cultural turn, we came to the cognitive one. And the cognitive one, I had a professor who was teaching neuroscience at Georgetown. I think he's still teaching now. Professor, I could never pronounce his name, and we call him Professor G. He's a neuroscientist, Di Giorgino, something like that. I think he's originally from Italy, but he's very American. And it's, you know, they went into studying how the interpreter's brain works and how the translator's brain works and what areas of the brain are triggered when you are going from one language to another, or you are taken from one language, and then, you know, having that bilingual, they call it advantage, or the bilingual mechanics, which areas of the brain are triggered when you are thinking in one language and speaking in another, like I'm doing right now. I'm thinking Arabic, French, Taqbaylit, something else, but I'm speaking in English, right? So I'm sure that there is some kind of tbicha, ratatouille going in my brain. I cannot show it, but Professor Giorgino and many other people have done actually X-rays, right, with MRIs and everything showing the areas of the brain that were going hot, cold, or warm when the interpreter is working or when the translator is working. And all that data that was collected from there then went into application in the technological turn, right? What is called the technological turn. And this technological turn, with this turn, we went back to transfer. We left the idea of transformation. We abandoned it because we are back to discussing translation as a transfer. I take something from the original and then I reproduce the same thing in the other language. I'm not reproducing something entirely new as we are supposed to be doing in translation. Translation is not just copying and pasting, right? We're creating. We're supposed to be creating meaning, right? And then with the technological terms, surprisingly, we have now in translation studies, not so much in the profession as translators in practice, but in translation studies, we have now something called the philosophical turn. Now, translation studies with Salah Basalama at Calgary University, and who else? Pim in Australia, and Kakua in, I think, Finland. There is this question about what if we try to understand, again, translation as a work of philosophy, translation as thought. We're thinking when we're translating. We're producing meaning. We're not just copying and pasting. So that's the type of translation that actually gets us somewhere. We're not simply in communication. As important as communication is, it may lead to peace sometimes. Wow, wonderful. But if the machines can do that, then we have to have an edge on that. We have to have something that cannot be given by a tool that we create. We have to have that solipsist view of ourselves that makes us think that if we're capable to create a tool, we're also capable of creating knowledge. And knowledge, as I said earlier, I don't think is something that can be always entirely transferred. It's always created. It's not cooperating. Yeah, now it is. So how do we create this knowledge? Where do we create it? In that area where one language doesn't go into the other language. It's at the border, as who called it the borders of languages? It's Toury, I think. Yes, he is the one who was talking about this border with the semiotics turn. But Derrida, before him, was already talking about the gap, that thing that the LLMs cannot do. That's where translation happens, actually. That's where translation is meaningful, because that's when the transformation occurs. With Derrida, he says that translation as transfer. He doesn't put it in these words, right? And that's why in translation studies, people don't like Derrida, because he doesn't use the word transfer. But he was probably thinking translation as transfer is not possible, because I'll give you an example. If you take, we're in Algeria, it's a wide and rich country in geography, right? If you take a palm tree from Biskra, and that palm tree produces Deglet Noor, right? And you want to transplant it into, let's say, Béchar, right? You will think, it's a desert area, it's hot enough, we have an oasis here, we'll bring this palm tree and we'll transplant it here and we'll get Deglet Noor. Guess what? Surprise, you're not going to get Deglet Noor. It's the same tree. You're not going to get Deglet Noor. It's not its environment. It's not the soil, the environment is not the same. You're not going to get it. You'll take an olive tree from Tizi Ouzou, my hometown, and you transplant it in, I don't know, somewhere else, Bouira, you'll have a different type of olive oil. And those of you who are connoisseurs of olive oil, you know that Skikda and Tizi Ouzou and Bouira and Béjaïa and Jijel, they all give different types of olive oil. You cannot transplant one tree from one area and expect it to give you the same essence. That's not going to happen. And in translation history, we have experienced that, right? We took a pagan tradition from the Greeks, from the ancient Greeks, and we turned it into an Islamic civilization with Beit al-Hikmah. Guess what? Alphonse Fonsi did the same thing. He took an Islam raised to the entire European Renaissance. Same thing. He didn't take the same concepts. He didn't take the same beliefs. He transformed them. He didn't copy them and paste them. Just like the Greek tradition did not entirely apply to the Arabic Islamic tradition, the Arabic Islamic tradition did not entirely apply to the Latin Christian West at that time. So that's why no matter what we do with technology, we always need to keep in mind that humans make humans. And to make a human, it means to make a culture and to make a civilization. I know that there is a big hype right now about machines and the speed with which they work and all the wonderful things that they are going to produce. I can tell you one thing. When we talk about machines, I think that the machines are standing there and they are going, wow, is that me? Wow. They cannot believe it, you know, how impressed we are with these machines that we're creating ourselves, right? We're giving them a little bit too much credit and diminishing ourselves as humans because we can do much more. If we create a machine that can talk and simulate or mimic our thinking, well, we're not gods, right? We're not at that level of solipsism that we'll go and say, we're going to create a human that's like us, right? The only way we can we can create a human that's like us is by biologically creating that human, right? Right? Through cross-contamination, all right? Yeah, I'm just blanking out. I cannot find the right scientific term for that. All right, so again, I spoke about the borders of languages and Aristotle's metaphrasis. I did recently a presentation about one of Aristotle's least studied works, and that's the work on De Interpretatione, and it's in the categories. It's a very short work, but I recommend to the students to go and read it. Unfortunately, I didn't read it when I was in college, when I was your age, studying here. I couldn't read Greek at the time, sorry, but I encourage you to read it in any language you find it, because as translators, that will be very informative for you. You will learn a lot from it, and you will get the grounding in what it means to have meaning, right? In what it means to have meaning. So, and I was, as I said, I was making a presentation about that, and then my statement was that if the words themselves, just like the professor yesterday, his name? No. Our colleague who left this morning. Yeah, Ruslan Mitkov, yes. Yes, as Professor Mitkov mentioned it, the words themselves don't have just one static meaning in themselves. We have to give them that meaning, right? So if we have to give the words that meaning, it means that it's not as if these words are alive and they live in one language and they can get up and walk. For them to get up and walk in another language, we also have to give them meaning, right? I think that something that can sound very philosophical and maybe not very clear, but if you read that work by Aristotle's work, you will understand that it's basically the most fundamental and most important concept in translation. So, if we cannot translate, as Derrida says, why do we translate? We have Edith Grossman, you probably, the colleagues in Hispanic literature probably know her. She's the translator of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, into English. And somebody asked her in 2010, and they said, why do we translate? She said, we translate to have a deep reading of the original version. When she said the version, the first version, it means that one work can have several versions, right? And if it has several versions, it means that it is created every time anew. It's not, we're not copying and, I was gonna say copying and calling. We're not doing copier-coller, huh? We're not copying and pasting. We are reading deeply a work in its first version, and then we create a second version, a third one, a fourth one. Historically, I mean, some people call it phenomenology of translation, because one work can have several meanings and several lives throughout history. 2-3 years ago, there was a new translation of another Algerian guy, but his hometown is not Algiers, it's Sogaras. A new translation of the Confessions of St. Augustine into English. You know how many translations that book has had in its lifetime? I mean, everybody and his brother wanted to translate the Confessions of St. Augustine. But very recently, there was a new translation. Why? Because there are new ways of understanding, new categories of understanding, indigenous categories of understanding that are created every day as we connect and we communicate and we come in contact with different cultures, with different people, with different environments, and with different technologies that create different needs in us. And with all these different things, we have different humans, new humans who need new understandings, even of old things. That's why we translate, in my opinion. So, as I said, what's her name? Edith Grossman sees translation as version, a translation as one work can have different lives. Different lives. Benjamin too was saying that a work can have different lives, right? And if it has different lives, it can be through different languages, through different cultures. You can read we can read the same work in English, you and I, each one of us, and each one of us will come out with a different understanding of that work, right? That's why we go to school, right? That's why we have professors at school, so they can guide us on how to understand. But what we understand comes from us, and that's the organic aspect of us understanding, of cognition in humans. Now, can the machine have that kind of organic aspect? I think all the machines get the same understanding. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that they all have the same takeaway. I asked the same question to Copilot, to ChatGPT. I was told not to mess with Gemini because apparently it has some mental issues, so I didn't want to get into it. But I did Copilot and I did ChatGPT. And I asked them, what did Hunayn ibn Ishaq mean when he says, قرأته نقلته ثم نقلته? I read it, the machine says, and a lot of translators say, I transferred it and I transferred it. Or they say, I read it, I translated it, and I translated it. Now, this is the master translator. Sheikh al-Mutarjimin cannot be using the same word twice to mean the same thing. He says, نقلته ثم نقلته, and in another in the Rasail, you know, the epistles of Hunayn ibn Ishaq, he says, نقلته ثم ترجمته, which means he transferred it from Greek. Then, once he did the transfer, he translated it. That's because translation, in his mind, meant transformation, right? So he translates it as we understand or practice translation today, mirror image. Then he'll go a second round and take off things that you cannot have gods in the plural, for instance. You have to have one God. You cannot have certain things in Greek philosophy, the first mover, for instance, right? If you ask ChatGPT or Copilot, you ask them what is the unmoved mover, they will tell you المحرك الغير متحرك. I mean, it's or المحرك الأول. The best option that they will give you is المحرك الأول. Whereas neither Hunayn nor Al-Kindi understood the first mover or the unmoved mover as just something that moves itself. It's God. That got translated into God, right? God the creator, right? Which is the same for Hunayn was an historian Christian, Al-Kindi was a Muslim, but they both understood that the first mover in their culture could not be anything else than God, right? God the creator. So when we work with texts like the Arabic tradition, and I encourage students, I beg you, please go and get these old texts and read them. Don't dismiss them as something that's out of fashion. Please, يرحم والديكم, go and read them. The wealth of knowledge that you will find in there is going to be with you for the rest of your lives. And I'm very sorry that I didn't read them when I was your age. I had to get older and wiser and move to the other side of the world to discover these texts. I beg you, go find them. They are available. Many of them are available online, right? If you find them in translation, read them in translation. If you can read Arabic, read them in Arabic, because these texts are absolutely the foundation of what you can do in this cultural environment for the future. It's going to come from there. It's not coming from neural machine translation. And that's all I had to say to you today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Izri Fadma, for your presentation that invites us to reflect not only on the technical capacities of neural machine translation, but also on deep philosophical questions posed by thinkers like Derrida, particularly the notion of the untranslatable. Thanks again. So thank you all for your active participation and attention during this session. Before I give the floor to Professor Fassi, who will be moderating the following session about didactics and AI, I think that I open the floor for questions first, or? We open the floor, okay, so I give the floor to Fassi Leila. Professor, would you come here to moderate the following? Thank you.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. السادة الأساتذة، الزملاء الباحثين، الحضور الكرام، يسعدني ويشرفني أن أفتتح هذه الجلسة العلمية التي نخصصها اليوم لموضوع بالغ الأهمية يتمثل في التقاطع بين التعليمية الديداكتيك والذكاء الاصطناعي في مجال الترجمة. فقد بات من الواضح أن الثورة الرقمية وعلى رأسها الذكاء الاصطناعي لم تعد مجرد عنصر مساعد في العملية الترجمية، بل أصبحت عاملاً محورياً يعيد تشكيل مفاهيم الممارسة والتكوين والترجمة في حد ذاتها. إن انخراط الذكاء الاصطناعي في الأدوات المساعدة في عملية الترجمة كالترجمة الآلية العصبية وأنظمة إدارة المصطلحات القائمة على الخوارزميات يدفعنا اليوم إلى طرح تساؤلات عميقة حول كيفية تأطير هذا التحول في البرامج التكوينية. كيف يمكننا كأكاديميين أن نعد الطالب المترجم ليكون فاعلاً واعياً في البيئة التكنولوجية المتغيرة؟ ما هي المعارف والمهارات التي ينبغي إكسابها للطلبة ليتمكنوا من التفاعل النقدي مع هذه التقنيات؟ وكيف نعيد التفكير في دور الترجمة البشرية صعود الأداء الآلي؟ تسعى هذه الجلسة إلى تقديم إجابات أولية لهذه الأسئلة من خلال مداخلاتكم التي تقوم على مقاربات تعليمية وتطبيقية حديثة من شأنها أن تسهم في تطوير منهجيات تدريس الترجمة وتوجيه البحث الأكاديمي نحو رهانات العصر الرقمي. أشكر الحضور وأشكر كذلك المتدخلين على اهتمامهم بهذا الموضوع بالذات وعلى كل المداخلات التي سيقومون بها من أجل إثراء هذا المحفل العلمي. Distinguished professors, fellows, researchers, esteemed attendees, it's both an honor and pleasure to open this session dedicated to a topic of growing significance, the intersection between didactics and AI in the field of translation. It is increasingly evident that the digital revolution, at the heart of which lies artificial intelligence, is no longer a mere auxiliary component in the translation process, but rather a central force reshaping the concepts of practice, training, and translation itself. The integration of AI into translation tools such as neural machine translation engines compels us to reflect deeply on how this transformation should be addressed within translators' training programs. As academics and educators, how can we prepare translation students to become critically engaged professionals in rapidly evolving technological environment? What knowledge and skills should be prioritized to enable them to interact thoughtfully and responsibly with these tools? And how might we rethink the role of human translation in an age increasingly dominated by automation? This session seeks to provide preliminary answers to these questions by presenting innovative pedagogical and practical approaches that can contribute in the development of translator education, and guide academic research in response to the challenges of the digital age. So thank you for your presence and engagement. I look forward to a rigorous and enriching academic discussion and that advance this vital field of knowledge. Now, yeah. Okay. The first online speaker, I think, is Gabriella. Let me just a moment to search the name of Gabriella. Well, I think I have it here. Patricia, isn't it? Gabriella. Oh, okay, Gabriella. Sorry, I need to find the Gabriella and the title of her intervention. We need to present it to the audience, isn't it? Okay, so we give... Okay, we give the floor to Gabriella. I think she's waiting. Welcome, Gabriella. Good morning, good afternoon. I don't know from where she is.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
From Gelma. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to come to
Ah, from Gelma.
Yes, I'm
Isn't it Gelma?
Right now. Yes. I'm of Romanian origin, but I'm living in Algeria since 2014.
Okay, welcome. The floor
Thank
is
you
yours.
very much. And thank you for the opportunity. It was very nice to have this in Algeria, and I hope for many more events in this topic. So today I would like to talk to you. Let me share the screen. Okay. Okay, so maybe you don't know me. My name is Gabriela Coahtala. I'm of Romanian origin. I'm a certified English to French and Romanian translator since 2010. And I'm also the founder of the first Algeria-based localization agency for researchers. Actually, today, it's the third birthday of the agency. It was founded on May 8, 2022, here in Gelma. And my aim is to help researchers reach the international audience. And that's what I'm focusing on today, because we are going to talk about balancing efficiency and ethics, the AI's impact on translation and localization, with a focus on academic content. First, I would like to frame the core theme of this presentation, because I think it's important to have the efficiency, but also the ethics when we work in our industry. And I think we should use all the tools we have, but don't lose that ethical side. So we will focus on efficiency and ethics, or your focus on AI in translation?
Please, Gabriela, I interrupt you just to remind you that time is strictly limited to 15 minutes, okay? Thank you.
Yes. We will talk about ethical responsibilities, and of course, I have prepared some clinical meditations that I can also share later. I can share the link to the presentation, and of course, to see which is the path forward. So we need to understand that today AI is reshaping the world. So we can't stop it. We have to understand, we have to adapt, we have to understand that AI is here to stay. So what are we doing? We are learning it, we are applying it in our daily work, and how we apply it. I think that's important. So we have AI in translation, but we also have the ethical responsibility. And again, my focus is on academic content. So let's do a quick summary about AI, about AI systems. And in my opinion, especially in academic translation, AI should be guided by human expertise. And we will see later why it's important to have the human touch, especially in academic translation. And as we know, translators are taking new roles, they are learning new skills, but again, with that ethnical touch at the end of the day. I think it's very, very important to have it. Okay, when it comes to ethical responsibilities, so we know that the AI tools are very efficient, we can work very quickly, we can use a lot of research, we can summarize a lot of papers maybe with some tools, but what does it mean to ethnically translate or revise even, because we are not only translating, maybe even revising, when we are working on academic research point, because it's important to safeguard the credibility of the research and at the same time spread it towards the international audience. Okay, so here are my my principles that I'm following even in my own work. So first of all, would be tool test matching. So for example, even if you work in marketing, even if you work with researchers, even if you work with on technical documents, you need to know the tools. You need to understand which tool is for which content. So I think that not all tools are relevant for all the content. So that is very, very important. I am very fond of tools, and I believe that we need to learn as many tools as we can, even if at the basis they are all the same, but we need to learn the tools. There is no coming back from that. So that's first principle, match the tool to the content. And in the academic content, we all know that there are several online tools. Some are free, some are paid tools. And so we will see, we have to be very careful about that. A second principle is data rights. And as researchers, you know that you can't have someone taking your I don't know, 3-4 year research results and put them in a tool online. You know that. And when you trust someone with your paper, for example, or your thesis, maybe the person is allowed to work on your content, but he or she doesn't have the right to share it. So it's very important, in my opinion, to create clear policies around the data rights and use this in our industry, in every country, to be real safe on when it comes to for example, the researchers' results. A third recommendation, which I strongly believe in, it's translator education. We don't have to stop learning. For example, you have a degree in translation and you are like, okay, I'm a translator, I will stop learning. No, we are learning every day. We should learn every day. New tools, new approach, new ethnical approach. So I think as a translator, as a proofreader, we need to not like policies, but also like mindset. So I want to learn every day. I want to apply the newest rules when it comes to translation, sharing tools, the ethnical rules. I want to do that. So translator education for me is very, very important. The fourth principle is, in this case, because we are talking about academic content, is the researcher involvement. So I have been working with researchers since 2018, and more particular with Algerian researchers since I established the agency. And there are people asking me, how can I deal with papers from several domains? For example, architecture, computer science, biology, I don't know, other political science, etc. First is because I created a work procedure where I explain to the researchers that it's not a one-way collaboration, it's back and forth. I believe that both parties, researcher or researchers, because there are several co-authors, and the linguist, translator, reviser, but at the end of the day, it's a linguist, they should work together, because the main and the final common aim is the publication of that article. So in my opinion, we should have the researcher involvement, because the researcher should know about the translation proofreading process. They should understand about the tools we are using. We should be transparent about how we are working. So for me, to stay ethical and efficient, involving the researcher in this particular case, academic content, for me is very, very important, okay? And I promised you a very, very short presentation, and even if it's short, I think it's important. I think this is the balance. We can't forget about the AI. It's here to stay. But more than finding ways to be ethical and how to learn tools is to find that mindset to say, for example, okay, we have AI, I will use it, and I will find the balance between efficiency and ethics. Again, we took the academic content topic, but this is relevant to the entire translation and localization industry. Even if we don't have local laws, or I don't know, we should be the ones searching for that balance. We should be the one that have that mindset to say, okay, I am working on a piece of content, and I'm using AI, but I need to find the balance. And of course, until today, as I'm working, as I told you, with the researchers, and I read a lot of papers about using AI for translation, revising, etc. We don't have a tool that can guarantee 100% that the research result, for example, will not be shared with other platforms. So we need to find that balance, efficiency and ethics. We work with AI, but we understand AI's limits. We understand that we need to learn every day. So that's for me. And I think it will also allow us to show the clients or colleagues or the world in general that we are professional at the end of the day, that we are transparent, that we are loving our job, because when you love what you do the best, and the best is to create a balance. I think this applies not only in this case, but everywhere. I think we need to find the balance between efficiency and ethics. So I hope in this short time, I covered a little bit of what I'm trying to do when it comes to my own work. So for me, the key word, to take it from a paper, the principal key word is balance in everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabriela, for respecting time, for concluding before I ask you to conclude, because I prepared myself to come here just to tell you conclude. Please, you have 5 minutes to conclude, so you do it before before I ask you to do. شكرا جزيلا جابرييلا على احترامك للوقت المتاح لك حتى أنك you finished before your time finish. 12 دقيقة. You had 5 minutes before.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriella. Now, thank you for your valuable recommendations in the use of AI. Your intervention was very insightful. Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to Tombolaza, Kanut, Filament, and Toto Hassina André. I don't know if they are Tombolaza. Who is online, Tombolaza or... Who's online, please? من على الخط؟ عندنا تومبولازا وعندنا كذلك باتريسيا. نو باتريسيا؟ هل تومبولازا على الخط من فضلكم؟ نو. Alia? Okay, Alia. So I give the floor to Alia to present her communication. Alia, the floor is yours if you are online.
Thank you very much. Can you hear
Thank
me?
you. Welcome, Alia.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Thank you very much. My name is Aliya Almakatgulova. I'm from Kazakhstan. Let me share my presentation. Can you see my presentation?
Sorry? Yes, yes. Go on. Yes, you can.
Shall I start?
Go on. You have 15 minutes, please.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
Alia, you have only 15 minutes. Please.
I know. Thank you. I know.
Thank you.
I'm a PhD student. I'm from Kazakhstan. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers for giving me such a great opportunity to speak to you about my topic. It's a great honor for me to speak at a high-level international conference. I hope that my topic will be interesting for you. And the theme of my topic is the use of AI for translating a documentary novel. First of all, I'd like to say that automated translation is a technology that allows text to be translated from one language to another without human involvement. It works automatically thanks to specialized programs and algorithms. Modern automated translation systems they use neural networks. It's a type of artificial intelligence inspired by the workings of a human brain. Neural networks are trained on massive amounts of data, for example, millions of sentences in different languages. In order to understand how it works, and phrases are translated in various contexts. It works in the same way. Language processing, the system first analyzes the text, breaking it down into words, then identifying parts of speech and building the sentence structure. Understanding meaning. The neural network tries to understand what the phrase means rather than just translating word for word. Generating the translation after analyzing the system produces a translation in a target language aiming to preserve the original meaning, program, and style. Advantages of this approach: more accurate and natural translation, the ability to translate complex and colloquial expressions continuous environment in quality through learning from a new data. In short, automated translation using neural networks is a smart way of translating that aims not just to replace words but to convey the full meaning and style of the text. Then, advantages of translation for documentary novels, it's speed in automated translation. One of the most significant advantages of automated translation system, especially those powered by neural networks, is speed. Then delivers translations much faster than traditional methods. Traditional translation methods involve human translator reading, understanding, and then manually translating text. It takes a lot of time. These take hours and even days, depending on the length and depending on the context. In contrast, neural machine translation systems can process and translate a large volume of text in seconds and minutes. The next advantage is cost saving. With automated translation, large volumes of content can be translated instantly. This minimizes the need for hiring professional translators for every project. The next is scalability, handles large text volumes, easily scaling translation capacity. One of the most powerful features of automated translation, especially with neural machine translation, is scalability. It allows organizations to translate massive amount of content quickly and efficiently without the need to expand their workforce. The next advantage is accessibility. One of the standout advantages of modern artificial intelligence translation is its accessibility. It's easy for anyone, anywhere, and use high-quality translation tools. Next slide, challenges and the limitations of AI translation. There are accuracy issues, errors, and the inaccuracies, especially with subtle language nuisance. Context awareness, artificial intelligence may struggle to grasp cultural and historical context. For artificial intelligence, it's hard to translate historical context. Maintaining the author's unique voice can be difficult. Voice, it means in indirect meaning. It means unique author's style. It's also, for artificial intelligence, it's also difficult to translate, to transform author's style. Next, popular, I don't want to talk about this slide, these tools thoroughly, because before me there were a lot of information about translation tools. Just say that they are Google Translate, DeepL, Microsoft Translate, and so on. Steps of artificial intelligence translating in documentary novels. First of all, we should prepare the text. Then we should choose what type of translation tools we can use to translate automatically. Then after the translation, we should edit, check for accuracy, style, and the contextual fit. Then we should correct, fix errors. The text should be readable and coherent. Then preserving author's style, I think that this is a key point for every translator. We should try to transfer author's style. It depends on text. We should text analyzing, style focusing, editing, and thesaurus use. For me, I try to select synonyms to enrich the language with staying true. cultural and historical adaptations. I think that artificial intelligence has some problems with transferring cultural and historical adaptations. For example, for artificial intelligence, it's hard to transfer metaphors, it's hard to explain historical context. In this case, we should try to explain the meaning of such also codes of natural codes, cultural codes, and so on. Next slide, successful examples of artificial intelligence translation. I think that with interviewing translations, biographical translations, artificial intelligence deal with its work very successfully. Making conclusion, I'd like to say that as I use artificial intelligence for translation documentary, novel stories, I say that there are a lot of advantages and also both disadvantages of using artificial intelligence in translation. Saying about advantages, I can say that it's more faster and it saves my time and money. I have technical assistance, multilingual support. It's easy, it's comfortable to translate for several languages. But I would like to say about the limitations and risks. First of all, we have a risk to lose the style while using artificial intelligence in our translation. We have a risk to lose the style of author. Non-fiction story often includes the author's style, cultural references, and emotions. It's impossible to transfer the author's emotion using by artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence may convey the facts but miss the tone. The key word is the tone and the artistic features. Also, artificial intelligence may misinterpret and translate complex expressions, irony, phraseological units. And also, after they using artificial intelligence or translation tools, we should post-edit because without post-editing, it's impossible to read such kind of context. After machine translation, editing by a professional translator is necessary, especially if the text is intended by publications. In conclusion, I would like also to say that artificial intelligence may be useful to create the first version of the translation. But however, if we want to reach a high quality literature and accurate translation of documentary story, the translator or editor, translators and or editors' help should be required. That is all concerning my.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Aliyah, for your intervention, for your fructive intervention on the use of AI in the translation of documentary stories. Thank you for all the recommendation you gave for the different steps and the challenges in this kind of translation. Now I give the floor to Jaroubi Abdelhamid, who's waiting on. He's always online. Is he online, جغوبي, please? هل جغوبي عبد الحميد على الخط؟ نعم. إذن أحيل الكلمة دون إطالة لجغوبي عبد الحميد إن كان يسمعني. جغوبي, are you here? جغوبي. Okay, sure. No, so I give the floor to who? بالنعمان. She's here I think. مكان. Nobody is online إلهام. لا يوجد أحد على الخط. What should we do, Miss? Okay, just a break of few minutes. نتوقف لدقيقة أو دقيقتين حتى نعلم ما سيكون بعد التدخل الأخير. Okay, so we open the floor to discussions. If you have any question about the last two interventions. يلا هل هناك أسئلة حول المداخلتين الأخيرتين؟ وإن كان هناك أسئلة حول مداخلة الأستاذ سينتاس هو معنا هنا. إن كان لديكم أسئلة. لا يوجد أسئلة، إذا ننتظر ما سيكون بعد هذا الفاصل القصير. وحدة. الآن أدعو الزميلة بالنعمان رتيبة لتتفضل معي هنا لتقديم مداخلتها. I invite my colleague بالنعمان رتيبة to join me here. Come to the stage, please. Ratiba بالنعمان will present a communication entitled Students' Reliance on AI and Skills Acquisition. باسكو شفت. اوكي، المداخلة هي باللغة العربية، وانا بما انه العناوين مترجمة في البرنامج ظننت ان المداخلة باللغة الإنجليزية. ليست مترجمة؟
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بداية أود أن أشكر الهيئة التي قامت بتنظيم هذا الملتقى على إعطاء هذه الفرصة للمشاركة، وأرحب بكل الحاضرين وبضيوفنا الكرام. إذن مداخلتي اليوم ستكون بعنوان اعتماد الطلاب على الذكاء الاصطناعي وآثاره على اكتساب المهارات. هي دراسة حالة لطلاب سنة الثالثة ليسانس بمعهد الترجمة جامعة الجزائر 2. إذن هذه الدراسة ستتمحور حول إشكالية أساسية تتمثل في مسألة تتعلق باستعمال الطلبة المتزايد للذكاء الاصطناعي في الترجمة خلال حصص الأعمال الموجهة. إذن هذا أكيد شيء يقاسمني فيه، وملاحظة يقاسمني فيها الكثير من الأساتذة، أن طلبتنا الآن يشاركون في يعني يعملون كثيرا بأدوات الذكاء الاصطناعي في الترجمة، وأكيد لا يمكننا أن نمنعهم من استعمال هذه الأدوات، لأن التكنولوجيا لابد من إدماجها في الدراسة وفي التعلم، عملية التعليم كذلك. لكن في نفس الوقت علينا أن نبحث في تداعيات الاعتماد الزائد أو المفرط على الذكاء الاصطناعي في نعم شكرا. إذن علينا في نفس الوقت أن نبحث في تداعيات استعمال الذكاء الاصطناعي في الترجمة أثناء الدروس وأثناء التمارينات التي تقدم إلى الطلبة خلال الحصص التعليمية. إذن لذلك نحاول أن ندرس من خلال هذه المداخلة هذا الموضوع، وذلك انطلاقا من إشكالية فحواها: ما مدى اعتماد الطلاب على الذكاء الاصطناعي في الترجمة، وكيف يؤثر ذلك على أدائهم أو على اكتسابهم للمهارات. إذن انطلقنا من فرضيات. إذن 3 فرضيات. الأولى، قد يؤدي استخدام أدوات الذكاء الاصطناعي إلى تعزيز مهارات الطالب وصقلها إذا تم استخدامها بالشكل الصحيح. الفرضية الثانية، قد يؤدي استخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي إلى إضعاف مهارات الترجمة الأساسية إذا لم يتم توجيه الطالب في كيفية استخدامها. والفرضية الثالثة، قد يؤدي تعود الطالب على استخدام أدوات الذكاء الاصطناعي في الترجمة إلى الاتكالية وعدم السعي إلى لاكتساب مهارات جديدة أو بذل الجهد. إذن ما هي أهداف هذه الدراسة؟ هدفنا من هذه الدراسة هو أولاً توعية كل من الأستاذ والطالب حول إيجابيات وسلبيات استخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي في تعليم وتعلم الترجمة، وحول أهمية التركيز على تطوير المهارات الأساسية التي لا يمكن أن يحل محلها الذكاء الاصطناعي. هذا من جهة. وثانياً، محاولة تحسين جودة تعليم الترجمة وتطوير استراتيجيات تعليمية أكثر فعالية تدمج فيها التكنولوجيا في دروس الترجمة لكن بشكل مناسب وآمن. إذن دراستنا ستتضمن محورين. المحور الأول كان نظري أكثر. إذن تحدثنا فيه عن استخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي في تعليم وتعلم الترجمة. وكما تعلمون الذكاء الاصطناعي تم إدماجه في عملية التعليم وفي عملية التعلم في نفس الوقت. إذن يمكن للأستاذ وللطالب أنه يستفيد من هذه التكنولوجيا بشكل إيجابي، لكن في نفس الوقت يجب أن يكون على علم بسلبيات هذا يعني استخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي وما يمكن أن ينجر عنه من جوانب سلبية. هذا في الجانب النظري. سأحاول أن أكون أن أختصر قليلا في المضمون. إذا المحور الثاني وهو الأهم هو الدراسة، دراسة حالة. إذا المحور الثاني كان عبارة عن دراسة حالة لطلاب السنة الثالثة ليسانس ترجمة. إذا هذه الدراسة كما قلت تمحورت حول شقين. الشق الأول كان عبارة عن اختبارات ترجمة. تم اختبار الطلبة وأعطيت لهم ترجمات يقومون بها باستخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي وبدونه، وتمت المقارنة بين الترجمتين. والشق الثاني هو عبارة عن استبيان. في الاستبيان طلب من الطلبة الإجابة على مجموعة من الأسئلة لاستكشاف بعض الجوانب المتعلقة باستعمالهم للذكاء الاصطناعي. إذن هذا من ناحية المنهج. إذن المنهج المستعمل في هذه الدراسة هو دراسة حالة. إذن لعينة من طلبة السنة الثالثة ليسانس تخصص ترجمة. إذن نبدأ باختبارات الترجمة، المقارنة التي قمنا بها بين الترجمة باستخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي وبدونه. وصلنا ذلك عبر هذا الجدول. إذن قمنا مقارنة الترجمتين. في الحالة الأولى لاحظنا أن قبل استعمال الذكاء الاصطناعي لا يوجد وسائل أخرى للترجمة. خلال الحصص العمل الموجهة الطلبة لا يملكون أي أداة أخرى للمساعدة من غير الهاتف. الآن يتخلون عن الوسائل التقليدية التي كنا نستخدمها في السابق كالقواميس والمعاجم، بدون هاتف لا يملكون أي أداة مساعدة في الترجمة. إذن وعلى عكس ذلك توفر الجميع تقريبا يتوفر على هاتف ذكي مزود بالإنترنت. في المرحلة الأولى كانت عملية الترجمة بطيئة وتتطلب وقت، وأكيد هذا الكل يعلمه. وفي المرحلة الثانية كانت عملية الترجمة سريعة وتأخذ وقت أقل باستخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي. كذلك المرحلة الأولى كان يتخلل الترجمة تفاعل ونقاش بين الطلبة وبين الطلبة والأستاذ، بينما المرحلة الثانية لا يوجد فيها تفاعل أو نقاش بين الطلاب والأستاذ. كان التفاعل أكثر مع الهاتف النقال. لا تفاعل بين المكونات في الحصة التدريسية. في المرحلة الأولى كانت الأخطاء اللغوية سواء الإملائية والصرفية والنحوية كثيرة. المرحلة الثانية كانت الأخطاء اللغوية أقل. في المرحلة الأولى كان هناك حذف كثير لبعض المقاطع والكلمات. المرحلة الثانية كانت يعني حالات الحذف قليلة. كذلك المرحلة الأولى كانت هناك ترجمات غير نمطية وغير متشابهة، يعني كل طالب كان يعطي عنده طريقته الخاصة في الترجمة. بينما في المرحلة الثانية التي استعمل فيها الذكاء الاصطناعي لاحظنا أن الترجمات كانت نمطية ومتشابهة، لأنهم كلها يعني مستسقات من تقريبا نفس المترجمات. إذا بعض الأخطاء الناجمة عن الترجمة بالذكاء الاصطناعي والتي تكررت عند بعض الطلبة، مثلا نلاحظ كلمة ملاك في جملة ملاك ومسيري محطات الخدمة. إذا ترجمها بعض الطلبة باستعمال الذكاء الاصطناعي إلى كلمة angels، وهذا خطأ يعني من الأخطاء الشائعة عند استخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي، لأنه هذه الأنظمة عندها مشكل في اللغة العربية بشكل خاص عندما تكون الكلمات غير مشكلة. إذا كلمة ملاك تمت ترجمتها إلى كلمة أنجل خطأ من طرف الطالب، لأنه ليس لديه معلومات كافية حول هذه الكلمة. نفس الشيء بالنسبة للترجمة من اللغة الإنجليزية اللغة العربية في جملة يعني الكلمة الإنجليزية plants التي ترجمها يعني هي في عبارة concentrated solar power plants، تمت ترجمتها باستخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي إلى كلمة نباتات، وهي ترجمة خاطئة يعني لهذه الكلمة، لأنه السياق يعني الطالب أخرجها من سياقها واستعمل أراد ترجمتها لكن بدون سياق وحصل على ترجمة خاطئة. يعني هذه من الأخطاء الشائعة يعني عند استخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي. إذا الطالب الذي لا يملك معلومات كافية حول الترجمة الآلية واستخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي يمكن أن يقع في أخطاء كثيرة من هذا النوع. إذا
أستاذة بن عمان من فضلك اختصار، بقي لك من الوقت أقل من 5 دقائق.
إذا أحاول أن أختصر. يعني الاستبيان هو المرحلة الثانية من هذه الدراسة، وعن طريقه اكتشفنا أنه 94% من الطلبة يستخدمون الذكاء الاصطناعي خلال حصص العمل الموجهة يعني في الحصص التعليمية، و6% فقط من لا يستعملون الذكاء الاصطناعي. معنى أنه العدد كبير جدا الذي يستعمل الذكاء الاصطناعي، والكثير منهم يستعملونه لنسب عالية يعني تصل إلى 50 فوق 50% إلى 70% أو إلى 90% كذلك. ومن أهم المترجمات الآلية المستعملة هي شات جي بي تي، جوجل ترانسليتر، ريفرسو كونتكست يعني في المراتب الأولى، وتأتي بعدها أنواع المترجمات الأخرى. والميزة التي يفضلها الطلبة هي أولا السرعة ثم السهولة، والدقة تأتي بالنسبة لهم في المرتبة الثالثة. يعني لا يعطون أهمية للدقة كما يعطون أهمية للسرعة ولسهولة الاستخدام، وتستعمل يعني أكثر شيء يعني ترجمة المفردات والمصطلحات. لكن بعض الطلبة يستخدمون الترجمة يعني معززة بالذكاء الاصطناعي للحصول على ترجمة نهائية، أي لا يبذلون أي جهد للحصول على الترجمة. في النهاية طرحنا سؤال على الطلبة عن هل يعني يمكنهم الاستغناء عن الذكاء الاصطناعي أم لا، فكان 36% من الطلبة كانت إجابتهم بنعم يمكنهم الاستغناء، لكن 64% يعتبرون أنهم لا يمكنهم الاستغناء عن الذكاء الاصطناعي في الترجمة، وهذا يمكن أن يشكل لهم عائقا مثلا في الأداء الأكاديمي في الامتحانات أو في المسابقات، مسابقات التوظيف مثلا. إذن من خلال هذه الأرقام التي رأيناها يمكن أن نصل إلى استنتاجات أساسية. إذن أول شيء أن الطلبة فعلا يميلون لاستخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي نظرا لسهولة استخدامه لسرعته، ولا يهتمون كثيرا بالدقة في الحقيقة. لكن يمكنهم أن يستعملوا فعلا الذكاء الاصطناعي لاكتساب مهارات مثلا تساعدهم على الفهم، على تحسين رصيدهم اللغوي، على تحسين الأسلوب. لكن في نفس الوقت يعني الذكاء الاصطناعي يجب أن نكون حذرين عند استخدامه. إذن سأحاول الاختصار والذهاب مباشرة إلى الخاتمة والتوصيات. إذن ختاما كما اتضح لنا يعني من خلال هذه الدراسة أن الذكاء الاصطناعي يمكن استعماله واستخدامه بشكل إيجابي في التعليم وتعلم الترجمة، وهو خطوة ضرورية لا يمكن أن نتخطاها. يجب أن نمر على هذه الخطوة من أجل مجاراة التطور الحاصل على المستوى العالمي، لأن الذكاء الاصطناعي يمكن أن يوفر فعلا أدوات مبتكرة سواء للمعلم أو للمتعلم في أداء عدة مهام. لكن ومع ذلك يجب أن يبقى التعامل مع الذكاء الاصطناعي جد حذر، خاصة مع تنامي استعمال الطلاب له. لذلك فهذا قد يؤدي إلى اتكالية عند بعض الطلبة، ممكن يؤدي إلى التعود على السهولة وعلى عدم بذل الجهود لاكتساب مهارات جديدة. إذا ينبغي توعية المعلمين والمتعلمين على حد سواء بإيجابيات الذكاء الاصطناعي وسلبياته، وبضرورة مسك المعلم لزمام الأمور أثناء الحصص التعليمية لتوجيه الطلاب في كيفية استخدام هذه الأدوات بالطريقة الصحيحة، مع التأكيد على أهمية حث الطلاب على بذل جهود فردية للتعلم اليدوي وتطوير المهارات الإبداعية من أجل خلق توازن بين استخدام التكنولوجيا والمناهج التقليدية في التعليم أو في تعليم الترجمة. وبذلك يمكن تأهيل مترجمين متخرجين قادرين على الاستفادة من مزايا الأدوات التكنولوجية الحديثة، وفي نفس الوقت مجاراة التطور العالمي في مجال مهنة الترجمة، لكن دون فقدان جوهر العملية الترجمية. أخيراً، تظهر الاتجاهات المستقبلية أن الذكاء الاصطناعي مستمر لا محالة في التطور ليفتح آفاق جديدة في مجال تعليم الترجمة، وهو واقع يعني فعلي لا يمكن أن نتجنبه، مما يتطلب من كل من المعلمين والمترجمين والمهتمين بهذا المجال مواصلة البحث والبقاء على اطلاع دائم على آخر المستجدات لاستغلال أحدث الأساليب والتقنيات التي يوفرها، مع ضرورة الاطلاع على التحديات القائمة وراء ذلك، واستغلال هذه الإمكانيات بحذر ومسؤولية وأخلاقية. وبذلك يمكننا تحقيق توازن فعال بين التطور التكنولوجي والحفاظ على القيم الأساسية للعملية التعليمية في مجال الترجمة، مما يساعد في تطوير جيل مستقبلي من المترجمين القادرين على التأقلم مع مستقبل يتزايد فيه الاعتماد على التكنولوجيا. أشكركم على الإصغاء والمتابعة.
شكرا. نعم
كنت في الوقت ولا
شوية
ما قدرتش
معليش معليش. شكرا لك أستاذة بن نعمان على هذه المداخلة. Now we take lunch break. نتوقف فقط شحال الوقت أستاذة بزاوشة من فضلك؟ For how much? An hour. نتوقف لساعة ونعود. ساعة أستاذة وين فوق؟ في أوكي، يعني نواصل الجلسات. إذن سادة الحضور، سيدات، نواصل الجلسات بعد الإفطار في المدرج ألف، l'amphi A. OK, donc on se retrouve à l'amphi A au département, à l'Institut de traduction. OK, شكراً.
sempre clara, a vida pra nunca machucar. Só ter na face aquela doçura de criar.